SIDA's mission in the Baltic Sea region is mainly about strengthening the implementation of the Baltic Sea strategy. And regardless of what Erik said before about gender issues not being included, I would say that ensuring equal opportunities for women and men is a central issue for the fulfillment of this strategy. But studying and evaluating gender equality is quite difficult, as it includes many qualitative aspects, not just measurable, quantified data. It is also difficult to define causality in any simple ways. Nevertheless, it is obvious that gender equality is an issue that cannot be neglected for democratic, economical, and creativity reasons. Gender mainstreaming is the international strategy that has been adopted by EU as well as by the UN and several countries such as Sweden to ensure equal opportunities for women and men. This strategy implies that gender equality aspects should be included in all areas of activity and being considered not as a special issue but as part of the ordinary work. The strategy of gender mainstreaming also applies to Interreg programs and other use of EU funds. And today I will present a study that has been carried out on behalf of SIDA's Baltic Sea unit by Josefin Dalander at SIDA and myself. We did the main work on this study during last year, and the report is available in print from today. Mats has them there in Swedish, warm from printing, and it will also be presented at Interreg Forum in February, and then it will be available in English as well. The background of the study is some experiences that okay. The background of the study is some experience that female project participants and project leaders have expressed spontaneously in various Interreg and Baltic Sea region contexts during the last couple of years. These stories have been our inspiration for designing the study, together with observations made at conferences with Interreg and Baltic Sea region themes, where male speakers have been dominating largely, especially on issues of big regional and economical importance, such as transportation, infrastructure, and environment issues. Women have been represented mainly in relation to social and cultural issues, which comprise a relatively small portion of the Interreg budget. The aim of this study has been to map out, analyze, and evaluate the degree of gender equality within a number of Interreg projects in the Baltic Sea region, focusing on everyday project work. Focus is on the experiences of individual women who are project leaders or local partner leaders or work package leaders. I will just use the term project leaders from now on for all of these within Interreg projects, and to study gender equality through aspects relating to power, such as representation, distribution of resources, and the actual content of project activities. Target groups are politicians and officials within authorities, local communities, regions, and organizations working with regional development and Interreg in the Baltic Sea region. The main theoretical points of departure for this study are drawn from feminist or critical theory on cultural, organization, and regional development. The research design is comprised of two integrated parts. The first one is a small desk study, a mapping of the gender structure within the Baltic Sea region program 2007 until 2013 in general, as well as of 4 specific projects within this program. This mapping functions both as a separate data set and as a context to the second part of the study, which is comprised of interviews with project leaders within these 4 projects, and the 5th project where we have not had access to written materials but was allowed to carry out interviews. On program level, we have studied the representation of women and men on various positions within the program or the projects altogether, based on information on the Baltic Sea region program website. On project level, we have surveyed project applications and websites examining information on women and men within the project organization, staffing, work tasks, responsibilities, etc. And this information has been analyzed with the so-called 3R method that was developed by the Swedish gender equality expert, researcher and investigator Gertrud Åström to be used for gender mainstreaming of organizations. The 3 R's stand for representation. Where are women and men represented? Resources, how are they distributed between women and men? And realia, or the actual content of the organization's activities. How is gender aspects being accounted for in this? And together, these questions make possible a methodical review of an organization, quantitatively as well as qualitatively. Applied to Interreg projects in the Baltic Sea region, this method has generated questions such as on which positions or functions within the projects or as end users of the project results are women and men located? How are the project resources, such as salaries, travel expenses, project funds, offices, titles, status, power, influence, the help from assistants, etc., distributed among women and men? And how are gender equality aspects being accounted for in the actual project work, in ideas, questions, problems, documents, reports, results, guidelines, policies, planning, implementation, and so on. The second part of the study is based on interviews with 7 project leaders, or as I said, local partner or work package leaders within the chosen projects, all of them women, but from different countries. The aim of this part of the study was to map the symbolic and discursive gender order in the practical everyday project work as it is experienced and described by the interviewees. Through the interviews, we wanted to illuminate issues about gendered leadership and the conditions for leadership within the projects, about gendered working processes and conditions for women and men within the project organization and everyday work, and to what extent gender issues and gender equality is being accounted for in practical project work, in everything that happens before official documents and reports are being published. Also here did we use the 3R method with focus on the last R, the actual content or the realia of the project. How do the project leaders perceive that they are being treated in relation to their gender, as well as other relevant factors such as age or disability, ethnicity, sexuality, etc.? And how is this treatment affecting their working situation and the possibilities of leading the project efficiently? What does the project culture or working culture look like? Which unwritten rules are there? Who is allowed or not allowed to say or do what? Which jokes are accepted or not within the project? Whose suggestions and ideas are regarded as important and included in the project, and whose ideas are being lost along the way? What are the effects on the results as well as on the ongoing work when certain people are allowed to have impact on the working process while others are not? In the 2 central documents of the Baltic Sea Region program, which is the operational program and the program manual, gender equality is emphasized a couple of times. When EU's horizontal policies are mentioned, the ensuring of equal opportunities, including the gender perspective, is described as an important principle for the program. It is stated that the promotion of equal opportunities for women and men, as well as the prevention of all kinds of discrimination based on sex, ethnicity, age, or disability, will be regarded as a positive factor in the choice of projects. The project owners are encouraged to integrate these factors into the projects, or at least take into account the project's impact on issues regarding equal opportunities. And project activities aiming at promoting equal opportunities should be described in the application as well as in the reporting. Projects aiming at structure building should describe how women and men are represented within project planning, decision making, and in target groups or as end users. However, there are no detailed guidelines in these documents stating or defining how this should be done in reality. In our mapping of the Baltic Sea region program, it became clear that there are some deficits regarding the gender equality of representation. Men are often on leading positions within the partner organizations and are therefore chosen to represent the organization in project contexts, such as working group or steering group meetings. Regarding work package leadership, there is a more gender balanced situation. Women are thereby having relatively large impact on the actual project work, but less influence over the integration of the projects into the partner organization. For 4 of the projects, we have also had access to their applications to the EU and have studied these from a gender and gender equality perspective. The application template includes a special box where the promotion of equal opportunities within the project is to be specified. Gender aspects are highlighted in the application instructions, but equal opportunities also includes other aspects such as age or ethnicity. 2 of the studied applications include formulations about the project being gender neutral, and these are words taken directly from the instructions, gender neutral. But that the project encourages women's participation on different levels and positions within the project. One of these applications points out that the project leader, as well as several of the people responsible for different parts of the project in different countries, are women. And the other of these 2 applications show a conscious and long-term strategy of getting a more gender-balanced representation, for example, in steering groups or as speakers at conferences and so on. And in this application, there is also a very important statement about the project being sensitive to the fact that women are less frequent within the field of the project, which is a male-dominated field, and that this requires a specific openness towards female participation in project activities in order to obtain the desired gender balance. Another project is described not as gender neutral, but neutral to equal opportunities. But then the application does not mention gender specifically at all. The project objectives in themselves are also described as promoting equal opportunities and a more equal society in general. The 4th project application describes explicitly how they both are encouraging the participation of women in the project, for example, on strategic or leading positions, and are actively trying to take their interests of different groups into account in project activities and results. How many of these formulations there are merely cosmetics, and which of them are having a real content is, of course, difficult to decide. But 2 of the projects seem to have a more conscious gender equality strategy than the other 2. However, only 1 of the 4 projects has taken gender aspects into account also in the description of the actual content of the project, while 2 of the projects are staying on the level of gender equal representation, that is just numbers. One of the projects does not mention gender at all, which of course can be a sign of real gender neutrality, but more probably, I would say, of gender blindness, as gender actually is mentioned specifically in the application instructions. However, except from this gender equal opportunities box, none of the projects mention gender equality in the rest of the application. And not even the one that clearly states that they are going to integrate these aspects in project activities. So it's only in the gender box, not in the rest of the applications. The interview study then. In general, it seems that the interviewed project leaders think that Interreg projects function relatively equally, both regarding gender and other aspects. That they think it's a nice working atmosphere, everyone can make their voice heard, and that it's explicitly the ideas that are in focus in the project. And if you have a good idea, people will listen. It seems like the very idea of network building and collaboration within Interreg programs promotes equality on many levels. At the same time, it seems that it's still often women who are secretaries and assistants. and dealing with practical and administrative things, and men who are experts, special advisors, steering group chairs, who have the last word in how something should be done, who sign important papers, and who represent the project on certain occasions when weight and authority is needed. In general, the interviewees also tend to trivialize their own experiences of inequality and discrimination. To say that one does not care is a common strategy among the women in the study. That one try not to pay attention to any discriminatory statements, for example. However, among the interviewees, there are also those who tell about numerous discriminating situations, both that they have experienced themselves and that they have observed around them. So-called male-dominating techniques or sexist or homophobic jokes is one aspect of this. Another is how masculine norms are being recreated within the Interreg context and in the type of male-dominated businesses within which the projects belong. It is important to note that this it's important to know that this does not only stem from the Interreg context, but also from the participants' own organizations or workplaces, present or former. All the interviewees are working in male-dominated businesses, and there are several overlaps between the projects and their daily working situation. Their own organization is a partner and sometimes lead partner in the Interreg project, and thereby becomes the daily situation at work also relevant for the Interreg collaboration. The interviewees' own attitudes towards EU's demands on taking gender equality aspects into account also vary greatly. Some of them think that the ambition of gender mainstreaming is very good, but call for clearer guidelines on how this should be implemented. For example, how gender aspects can be accounted for on project level, or how gender sensitivity can be an important factor when approving grants on a program level. However, one interviewee is more skeptical whether the focus of gender has any effect at all, while another expresses the view that the accounting for gender equality aspects is a defeat in itself, as it shows that there are problems with gender inequality, which she thinks one should not put stress on. However, many indications also show that there are other factors than gender. There are equally or more important in some cases for someone to have impact or influence over Interreg collaboration. This can be age, experience, expertise, formal responsibility, and in this international context, not least important, fluency in English. Another tendency is in the material is that the interviewees find it difficult with more integrated thinking about gender equality. That is beyond counting the number of women and men within the projects. Issues about influence, impact potential, distribution of resources, shaping of norms, is to a large extent left unreflected. And in some cases, this risks to recreate traditional gender patterns. And these are the same tendencies as was observed in the project applications, and it also corresponds with problems that have been identified by political scientist Malin Rönnblom at Umeå University in relation to regional development projects in Sweden. She says that issues of numbers and representation are being one-sidedly focused at the expense of power issues and of important gender aspects of the actual content of regional development, and that is true also for these projects. There are also ideas about among the interviewees that gender equality varies with nationality, class, and age. The Swedish and Finnish participants in this study, they imagine that society is more gender equal in the Nordic countries than in Poland or in the Baltic countries. But they also present concrete examples from their own projects that show the opposite. The degree of gender equality is also believed to be connected to education, social background, and generation. And these are common understandings in society in general, both that the well-educated middle class would be more gender equal than the working class, and also that every generation is more gender equal than the last, almost automatically. This is the strong discourse, but does not necessarily correspond to reality. The unequal relation between East and West also seems to be recreated within the projects, although the interreg programs in the Baltic Sea region are striving to achieve the opposite. And one example of that is the level of knowledge in English, for example, which is a bit higher in the Nordic countries, or Scandinavian countries at least, and that could make an advantage for participants from those countries. All in all, there are large possibilities for improvement of the interreg collaboration when it comes to promotion of equal opportunities and gender equality. Of special importance is that the instructions and demands from EU become more clear and detailed, both towards project owners and the ones that are to evaluate and approve the project applications. It is important that the gender box in the application template is perceived as relevant and decisive, and that there are expectations that what is written in that box is also visible in other parts of the application. Concrete examples of how gender aspects can be accounted for in everyday project work: gender mainstreaming with focus on power issues, also open possibilities for gender equality ambitions within each project, which goes beyond the level of representation, also to the content of the projects. And that can lead to a more equal gender order in the Baltic Sea region altogether. Thank you.
Questions, please.
You said that it risks to recreate gender stereotypes. What do you mean with this?
For example, that we assume that women are more interested in certain parts of society or in certain issues, that we assume that women are primarily interested in soft issues with about social issues, for example, or taking care of other people, or cultural issues and so on. That could also be reproduced within the project organization, that while the young women that we have here in our project, they are so good at taking notes from meetings, they are so good at doing all the practical things with getting coffee for the breaks and things like that, and they are so nice and so welcoming towards the guests that we have, so we have them do those things, but and then the men aren't so good at that, so they could do these other things where we need more authority and more weight. So cultural assumptions about what things each gender likes and is good at could be constantly recreated in a way that does not promote gender equality, because gender equality is basically about the possibility in shaping society and shaping your own life in the way that that would make the most potential. That is also the gender mainstreaming policy, for example, that Sweden have, like creating, shaping society and shaping your own life, and have the same possibilities of doing that in whatever way you would like. So that's one aspect of the stereotypes that could be just reproduced, because the cultural, I'm an ethnologist, and that is science about human as a cultural being. And the cultural patterns that we have, our norms and values and what we think is right for different people, is very strong and very difficult to change. So that's why those patterns can be sort of recreating themselves if we don't pay attention, if we want to have a more gender equal society. one of the things we have to do is break down some gender norms, I'd say.
Not a question, a story behind this work that Karin and Josephine have done. This morning I started to talk about the 90s and what establishing cooperation activity in the Baltic Sea region. I think it was 1 or 2 years ago I sent Josephine to an annual forum for one of the organizations who went established 92, 93 and still running. I don't want to mention the name, but it was one of the organizations. And Josephine came back and said, it's terrible, terrible. Old men talking every time. It's that organization can't do anything for creating a new future in the Baltic Sea region. And then we started, we can start to look at the gender aspect in the Interreg project. But I think it's much more to do. So, thank you, Karin.
Any more questions? I have a small reflection. Even if I'm a man, I've been working with gender equality since 1974. And during the years, I often hear, we know what gender equality is. And then when you start to ask the person who said that, you figure out quite quickly that they haven't a clue about gender equality. And I think because this is an area of knowledge from different perspectives. And if I'm looking over history in Sweden, as well in other Nordic countries, I'm more familiar with the Scandinavian countries, this education is often like fireworks. You find them, then send them up for a period, and then you have to wait some years, or 3 or 4 years, and then you have new fireworks. And how should we reach an ongoing educational process so people know in reality what gender mainstreaming and other areas really are?
Well, the Swedish gender equality policy is gender mainstreaming. It means putting gender issues and gender equality issues in every part of ordinary activities. To start with the authorities, state authorities, SIDA, as all other authorities, are having that as an issue to work with, and to put that into every part of the activities as a normal thing. Of course, that is also very much a risk of forgetting about it, just having it as a buzzword from time to time and then not doing so much about it. And but the thing is that you have to start working with it, and that it continues, although that certain person who likes this issue very much and works very hard, and then he or she, which is often is, quits, and then the issue is gone. For example, I have been during the last year working with Trafikverket, former Vägverket, and they are had since long time on a high level, strategic level, very good ambitions on gender equality, but they had problems getting it down to infrastructure investments, like creating new roads, for example. And I was involved in a pilot project here in Stockholm, Masmolänken, southern parts of Stockholm, where they wanted to do a real gender-integrated road projecting work. So they are starting to try to get it down to where the action is, sort of, and not just on talking level. But it is a long way to go, and it needs to be also accepted, because there's lots of misunderstandings, but also actually opponents towards gender equality, because gender equality is a very strong norm, especially in Sweden, a very strong self-image, national self-image, and then it's almost possible not to say, well, of course, we should have gender equality, and then you can't even discuss it because everyone has this consensus view on it, that we have gender equality, everyone wants gender equality, and then, well, we agree, so why argue about it? And then they just leave it. It's the same, it's very easy. If you go on the practical level, for example, this thing with the sharing parental leave in Sweden, actually it doesn't make that big difference. Of course it's good that both women and men can stay at home with their children, but it doesn't make that much difference if it's almost everyone in every family, it's the mother who stays at home for at least half a year first and gets to sort of set the standards for the family and gets to become the specialist, and then the father comes in later on and is always sort of the second parent, even though they're perhaps at home as much. So it's in reality it's much more difficult than to have it on the policy level.